Dr. Scott, and welcome to another episode of Black Excellence and Mental Health, the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about maybe three topics. So, we're going to talk about being the black sheep in the family, generational curses, and then I'm going to give y'all the full story of my journey because I know last time I gave y'all like a real abbreviated version without a lot of details. So, today, I'm going to give y'all a little more in depth of how I went from grocery department store person to Dr. Fred Scott, licensed professional counselor. So let's just roll with it for today. All right. So first on the agenda, let's talk about being the black sheep in the family. I mean, honestly speaking, I can't be the only one that felt like at some point in their life there was a black sheep in the family, but let's talk about it a little bit more. What makes somebody the black sheep of the family? Honestly, it could be a bunch of different things. It could be that there was one person in the family that kind of held everything together. They ended up passing away, and then things kind of, everybody kind of did their own thing. And if you weren't already in the group, any chances of becoming in the group kind of pass away with that person. Other things, let's see. Things that make you be the black sheep of the family could be, just family history. If you were married to the sibling, or if you had children with the original black sheep of the family, then it's only natural that your kids and spouse become the black sheep of the family, continue. So that just kind of passed along. Like you inherit that as a child of the original black sheep. Other things that make you black sheep of the family, just never really fitting in. Generally sometimes, there's nothing wrong with it, but people just do not fit in or feel like they fit in with their family. And it's not because they try to feel like they bougie or better than them or anything. It's just sometimes they just don't click, and that's all right. So how does being the black sheep affect your mental health? Because we are a podcast talking about mental health, so let's keep it on that. So the person who feels like the black sheep of the family, they could be going through a bunch of different things. In actuality, they could be wondering like, why me? Why nobody bang with me? Why my cousins don't reach out to me? Why my aunties don't reach out to me like they reach out to my other cousins? Why grandma don't talk to me like that? Why grandpa don't talk to me like that? Just that having all those thoughts like that, it can naturally start to build up like anxiety in that person. So then they got them questioning other things, other relationships that has nothing to do with the family. So they got them possibly wondering if they meet somebody like, or they want to get into like a romantic relationship, feeling like, well, if my family don't like me and my family don't feel like I'm enough, why is somebody else ever going to love me or want me around and things like that? And that can play with their mind, man. And that is a tricky thing to deal with, honestly speaking about, because when you get that mindset and it goes on for years and years, it just gets worse and worse. So let's take it off of romantic relationships. These people may find it hard to maintain just friendships because either they want to be they're so eager to please people that it's a turnoff for some individuals. Or what tends to happen the other way around is that they're so eager to please people that they end up being taken advantage of. And like I say, take it back. This all stems to that original feeling where if my family don't like me, I got to do extra stuff just to get love in this world. So I'm out here doing all this extra stuff. I'm doing things that a normal person wouldn't do. So if somebody asked me to hold a couple of grand and I just happen to have it, and normally I wouldn't lend that out, I'm lending it out just because I want people to feel me, want people to like me and love me. So that's one part of like the anxiety portion. So you can kind of see how being the black sheep of the family can kind of lead naturally to like what we call social anxiety, where we want these people to feel us. And if we don't feel like they enjoy us or they like us or want to be around us, we kind of naturally recluse back to like our own safety. And that means sometimes not going out the house, not going to events, not reaching out to people to be friends, or doing too much to reach out to people to be friends and being taken advantage of. So that's on the anxiety tip. But it can also be a depressive tip too when you think about it. So the person who feels like nobody loves them or even their own family don't love them and want to be around them, that can start to allow the depression mindset to creep in where nobody loves me, nobody wants me around. Maybe I shouldn't even be here. What is my purpose of being here? Nobody loves me. And when we start talking depression, like that can get serious real quick, because we see a lot of individuals attempt suicide from these type of thoughts and not reaching out for help. Because once again, they're not reaching out for help because they feel like my family don't love me, my family don't want to be around me. Why would a therapist want to listen to me? Clearly there's something wrong with me. So as you can see, it's just like this never ending cycle of how things happen when it starts going. But while you can feel like the black sheep, you gotta also question how much of that is my own perception or how much of that is my own doing. For example, I've seen it where black sheep literally, they go recluse from the family and everything like that, but when you challenge them on, all right, what is your thought pattern? What led you to this? And it kind of, a lot of times it'll show up, well, not, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes it'll show up where everything they were thinking is really only in their mind. So yeah, maybe your family didn't show up to a certain event that you had planned and things like that, but what was the real reason why? Did they not show up because they didn't like you? Or did they not show up because you planned an event you made an announcement for an event 2 days before the event, and your family or other people just couldn't adjust in enough time to be there to support you? That happens. And sometimes we let our own perception of things kind of cloud our mind, if that makes sense. So some things, what we perceive with the family may not even be true. Maybe you were born to the black sheep of the family, and because you felt like that, maybe you just naturally didn't want to be around your family. So family may have been reaching out to you, trying to reach out to you, but you so dismissive in your ways that you kind of just play it off, if that makes sense. So they don't really want to bang with me. Like they just reaching out because they can. In actuality, you got some family members that really do love you and want you to be a part of the family and get involved, but you allow your own perception to kind of get in your way. So what about stop being the black sheep? Or should I say, is it even possible not to be the black sheep of the family anymore? That's a legit good question. I think it is possible, but it's more so really only possible if the issue is your perception of it. If that makes sense. For instance, if you are legit the black sheep of your family, and your family kind of goes out of their way to truly exclude you from things, then no, that's a little hard to like coming out of that role. But if you look deep down inside and challenge some of your own thoughts, and you find out, well, maybe this is just my perception of things, and I'm looking at things wrong or looking at things from a different lens, you can start to change that perception on your own. We got this thing in counseling that we call challenging anxious thoughts. And I use it all the time with my patients when they're dealing with anxiety, a lot of times social anxiety. And you run through this gamut where whenever you have these anxious thoughts, you run through this gamut of questions that kind of allow you to challenge what that actual thought is or how true that thought is. So, matter of fact, we'll just run through it. So the first part of the gamut is asking yourself, all right, what am I anxious about? So we're going to stick in with the black sheep topic. So let's say I'm anxious about if I reach out to my family to come to something, let's say a birthday party, come to a birthday party. I'm anxious that they're going to tell me no, or they're going to not show up. They're going to tell me to come in and not show up. All right, so that's the anxious thought. Part 2 is asking yourself these 3 questions in order. If that was to happen, so in this case, if I was to have a party, invite my family, and they did not show up, what is the worst case scenario of them not showing up on my behalf? So you may answer like, well, worst case scenario is they don't show up and I never reach out to them again. Cool, simple. Then you take it down to the next level. What is the best case scenario that they don't show up? I invite them to the party and they don't show up. Well, best case scenario may be that I invite them to the party, they don't show up, but they give me a call to let me know like something genuinely happened and there's a legit reason why they didn't show up. So you don't hold it against them, like, because emergencies and things like that happen. Shit happens. The third question is, what is the most likely outcome if my anxious thoughts were to come true? Let's say for this example, some of my family members may show up and then some may not. I think that is a most likely scenario because we can invite people to events all the time, but everybody doesn't show up who we put on the guest list. So that's step 2 of challenging your anxious thought. The third step is you go back to your worst case outcome and you ask yourself, if the worst case outcome was to happen, would it matter in 1 week? So you ask yourself, okay, they don't show up to the party, they don't let me know what's going on, and I never talk to them again. Will it matter in 1 week? Okay, let's say it does matter in 1 week. So then you just take it up a level. Will it matter in 1 month? Okay, I'm still kind of hurt about it. You know, my family did me wrong. All right, cool. So it's still bothering you at 1 month. Let's go to 1 year. So in 1 year, will it still bother me that my family didn't show up to an event I threw over a year ago? And they didn't give me no type of heads up. They told me they was coming, but didn't show up. Does it still matter? You can answer that yes or no. So for exercise purposes, let's just say no, it no longer matters. So then you go to the final step and you ask yourself, all right, in my worst case outcome, is there anything that is totally off the wall in my thinking of it? So you can ask yourself, and you be honest with yourself with this one, because sometimes you find out, okay, your anxious thought has some validity to it. So you could be like, okay, in my worst case scenario, I said that they wouldn't show up. I would invite them. They said they would come. They don't show up, and I don't talk to them again. In that example, I personally don't find any irrational thought or anything that's just completely off the wall. So in a sense, my anxiousness that I'm feeling is kind of validated. Now, whether or not it's validated to the level that I originally started at is a different question. And what you typically find out is that after running through these series of questions, that the anxiety level goes down some. Now, a lot of times when you get to that last question, when you go back and you ask yourself, well, is there any, irrational thought or anything off the wall in my original worst case scenario? And you'll find like, yeah, that wouldn't happen. That is almost never going to happen. And then you can almost completely eliminate the anxious thought altogether. Even if the worst case scenario happened, it doesn't matter. So that's how you use the challenging anxious thoughts scenario to kind of help when you have those anxious feelings. And like I said, this works with thoughts. It can work with social anxiety. It can work with anything dealing with anxiety for the most part. So that's one of the exercises I typically have my clients go through when they're talking about having trouble with anxiety. So with that, to finish up this topic, I think if it's truly just a perception thing, that there's always the opportunity to get out of that role as the black sheep, especially if you've placed yourself in that role and no one else is kind of looking at you in that manner. All right, so let's take a quick break real quick. Let's shout out a few people. I want to thank my wife for sticking by me, helping me out on this journey. It has been a long road. She has been the support, the rock in my life when it comes to like getting things done. She's pushed me. I want to shout out to my parents. They, another one, always encouraging me, pushing me to go forward, doing things better than they did, not letting me settle. And even when they're not understanding some of the things that I kind of try to present to them and tell them what's my plan, still being supportive and not just dismissive, and kind of sticking around to see the big picture. I want to shout out to my babies. Those are my true motivation right there. Like both Tink and Gray. Yeah, man. I can't talk too much about them. I get teary-eyed. But yeah, they my motivation too out here. So we done with the shout outs. Let's get back to our next topic. Continuing on with the topic of family, let's talk about generational curses. I mean, you could drop it in the comment and I'll see it there because I'm checking the comments, but how many individuals feel like they are constantly dealing with generational curses within their family that kind of shows up in life? So a lot of times in the black community, we call generational curses, well, we link the term generational curses to things like alcoholism, infidelity throughout the generations in the family. So drug use, abuse in the family, like basically some form of trauma. That's what we typically call generational curses in the family. And the thing about these traumas is that they continue to repeat themselves. So that's what makes it the generational part. In counseling, well, not even counseling, because this is not something I learned in counseling, but I actually learned this doing my dissertation, that the correct term for this is called transgenerational trauma. And like we said, it shows up in a variety of ways, if that makes sense. So let's start off with the common one, alcohol. I'm pretty sure 99% of us who are listening to this podcast have heard the term or heard somebody say something to somebody in the family to this effect, where your granddaddy was a drunk, your daddy was a drunk, so you gonna be a drunk. That's an example of a generational curse or transgenerational trauma, in that something's happening in this family where the reliance of alcohol has become acceptable as an escape or a way of managing what's going on. So even on a deeper level, to break this curse, it would require us to kind of go and look at what's going on where this family needs the alcohol to cope with whatever's going on, if that makes sense. And true, sometimes if you're looking at it from like a biological standpoint, sometimes there's genetics do play a factor in this, where certain genes, of course, I'm not the expert on this, but I've done some research on it, but certain genes in our DNA basically make us more susceptible to alcoholism or certain drug uses and things like that. That's a fact that's been proven science-wise, but we don't know why. We know it does, but we don't necessarily know why. And if we do know why, I'm open to conversation. So feel free to put something in the comments and let me know your thoughts on it. Another one that's common in the black community is, let's just say it, incest rape. There's so many stories out there with my people where back in the day, you had an uncle. Let's take it back a few generations. Your great uncle might have touched on your grandma. Your grandma goes to tell her mother. Of course, she don't believe her, or if she does believe her, she feels like it's nothing she can do to help or do anything. So it's kind of dismissed and swept under the rug. So your grandma in turn internalizes that, well, dang, I guess this is just normal. This is what happens. So years go by. Grandma's grown. She has children. Something similar happens. And let's just say it's the same uncle. Let's just say it's your grandma's uncle still. And he manages to touch on your mom or one of your aunties or your uncles. And once again, it's brought to the mother's attention, but because the mom was so traumatized from her own experience and basically internalized, well, okay, I mean, this is just something that happens, or it's nothing I can do. Nobody's going to do anything about it. I can't break this family up over this type situation. That just gets swept under the rug again. So sweep, swept under the rug again. And then it happens to you. Same story. You go to tell your parent who was either it happened to them when they were younger and they don't believe you, or same mindset, they don't know what they can possibly do about it. And while it sounds like so fictional, this story is happening so much. And what makes it worse is that to break the cycle, all it takes is for one person to kind of like stand up and say, look, Uncle Johnny touched Lil Susie. We gonna get the police involved, or if you old school, I'm not condemning violence, but if you old school and you got that old school mind frame, we gonna beat Uncle Johnny's ass and he's never gonna touch another kid again. Like I said, I'm not condoning violence, but I'm just telling you ways that the cycle could be broken. Best practices probably be get the police involved. Let Uncle Johnny go do some time in jail and he'll think about it. And what happens is when you take it to that level, that child that was touched that go around, they realize they do care. This is not supposed to happen. So if the opportunity ever comes up again, not opportunity, but the situation ever presents itself again in the future, this child knows how, well, maybe let's say they're an adult now, this adult know how to react. There's no tolerance for it. There's no questions about if I'm breaking up the family or none of that. It's you did something wrong, we gonna correct it. I'm doing whatever's necessary to protect the children of the family. Another generational curse that we don't talk about too much is infidelity in the family. And it's a hard topic because nobody genuinely likes to think of like their grandfather or their great grandfather or even their father as like somebody. Matter of fact, let's remove it strictly off the men. They don't want to think of their grandparents, their mother, or their great grandparents. So both male and female as somebody who's done something wrong, like when it comes to cheating. And because we don't talk about it in the family meetings, it gets dismissed. So not too long ago, it wasn't uncommon for, I'll keep it on men for this one, for men to have maybe 2 or 3 separate families all in the same city. And nobody knew. Back then, no social media, no, that's social media too, but I was about to say no Instagram, none of that. Like towns were spread out. where everybody didn't know everybody, or if everybody did know everybody, everybody mind their own business. So it wasn't uncommon for your great grandfather to have a wife, be married to your Mima, whatever you call your grandma or your great grandma, and then have another family, and the discovery of this never really happened until the funeral. So all these loved ones show up to bury this man, or because this scenario more is likely we're talking with men. Show up to bury this man, and he got 2 wives, and then the fight breaks out. It happens, y'all, and it's still happening today. Like, I think it's a little less common now because of everything that we have with social media. So it's kind of hard to hide a second family, but some of those things are still happening now. Like as our elders are starting to pass away, so people showing up to the funeral that you never met, and it's a whole nother family, and that can cause some hurt, man. It can really hurt people. I mean, if you had this perception of this man or woman in your life, like this is, you know them, they've been good, they've been great, they've been a saint in your eyes, and for you to find out the funeral of them that maybe not, that can ruin your whole perception of somebody. So yeah, it's happening, man. It's happening out there. So how do we break free from these generational curses or transgenerational trauma? Most of the time, the easiest answer is basically just speaking up on it. If you know something that's going on in the family, bring it up, talk about it, and not talk about the person. So if you see one of your family members struggling with alcohol and they genuinely want help, help them. Just don't go around spreading the gospel about, yeah, I seen cousin Johnny the other day. Yeah, he's still drinking. He ain't doing nothing with his life. Have you reached out to Johnny? Hey, Johnny. Hey, man, I'm concerned about you. I want you to stop. If you want to stop drinking, I want to help you get there. I want your life to be better, so you ain't got to pass this on. Or catching it early. So if you see one of your young nephews or your young nieces doing something that you used to do back in the day, pull them aside. Hey, I've been through this. I'm telling you, it don't end well. But I know me giving you this information might not change your mind, but I just want to potentially give you the information, because we all know that as adolescents, they hard-headed as hell. We could give them the answers to life, and they're not, I do it on my own. But every now and then, those answers that we give them, it'll click in their mind, and they be like, maybe I shouldn't do that. And that moment of clarity is all that we need to break some of these generational curses. So another thing we can do, if we can't help individuals or individuals don't want help, we got to learn to set boundaries. Hey, there's nothing wrong with, hey, I'm not dealing with this person in my family because this is what they do. It's harmful to my mental health. It's harmful to my family's mental health. I'm not dealing with it. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't let anybody tell you that you are being disrespectful by protecting your mental health from these type of situations. Set these boundaries. And that's all on that. So let's take another break for some more shout outs real quick. Let's see who I did. I did wifey. I did my parents. I did my kiddos. So this go around. Let's shout out on some of the people that helped get me to this point in my career as far as the licensed professional counselor. So shout out to Miss Rachel Towns. Whether she know it or not, she was like a little mentor, not a little, but she was a mentor to me in so many aspects. She drilled me hard, even though she wasn't my clinical supervisor, to make sure that I was ready for that board test. So shout out to her. Shout out to my actual clinical supervisor, Ms. Tavera Hillier. She was a blessing in so many ways and helping me achieve my license to be a licensed professional counselor. Shout out to Mr. Demetrius Parasakis. I just shout out Demetrius, man. He helped me get my foot in the door in so many ways into this field. So I'm gonna just leave it at that. Shout out to Mr. Demetrius. Let me see. Shout out to Miss Alicia Ramey over at the VA hospital. Always looking out for us LPCs, making sure we taken care of and doing things, being treated well to the best of her ability. Standing up. She's the one-man union for the LPCs over at the Hampton VA. So if you're ever at the Hampton VA and you're a licensed professional counselor, make sure you seek out Miss Alicia Ramey. I don't know if they listening to this or not, but shout out to the Avengers. The Avengers, when I used to work at the Hampton VA, was the LPC care coordinators. They included myself, aka Iron Man, Miss Rosa Ridley, aka Hulk, Mr. Mike Johnson, aka Thor, Dr. Benita Jackson. I don't remember where hers were. I don't remember where her Avengers signed. That's bad. But she held us down too. Wisdom. Anything you needed, she had you there. Always there. Then we have Miss Jennifer Scott. No relation, but we claiming that we cousins, or I claim that she my auntie now anyway, so shout out to her. And then of course you had Miss Alicia Ramey out there. She was holding it down too. So shout out to those individuals. So I'm gonna wrap the show up today about giving y'all the full story of how I had to step out on faith to get where I'm at now. So some of the stuff in the beginning is not too important, but I'm gonna cover it anyway. As people who probably don't know, I've worked in the federal government since I've been 16, 17 years old. I started out working out at the commissary grocery store, but who knew that made you a full federal employee, straight GS 1 step 1. I came in under their student program, worked my way up a few grades, got out of the student program when times got hard, requested to kind of be a full-time employee, applied, and of course was looked out after by my supervisor at the time to make sure I got the job. Shout out to Miss Carol. She's no longer with us, but she was truly a good blessing in my life as well. So I did the thing at the commissary store for a while. I used to work at the front end, and I worked my way to the back in the grocery section. That's basically stocking the shelves and just maintaining the store as far as like keeping things stocked. From there, I ended up leaving the commissary and going over to supply at DLA, or Defense Logistics Agency. The in-between those, from the transition from the commissary to the Defense Logistics Agency, was that somewhere I had the bright idea to go sign up for the Air Force Reserves. So somewhere in the middle of that, matter of fact, in that transition, as I was going from the commissary to DLA, I started my journey as a United States Airman. So as a reservist, I was still able to maintain my job at DLA. So there, I met Mr. Hall, who was my supervisor at the time, and I was on a team where, in the supply system, we were sent like the orders. So like we worked in a giant warehouse where we received orders from all over the world, from the military, from different government agencies, and we fulfilled those orders. That's the most simplest way to put it. Things went great there. But of course, as time came along, I wanted to, continue to grow in the field. So I ended up applying to their sister agency, which was Defense Logistics Agency Disposition, which was right down the street from that job, where at this place in the supply system, we handled everything that was turned in to be destroyed or to reuse. So long story short, didn't like it there, and I got the hell up out of there as quick as I can. I transitioned to DLA Landing Maritime over in Portsmouth, Virginia at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, where I was a technical specialist, where basically I review credit card statements and everything that people in the shipyard was trying to buy to fix the various ships or build the ships and everything like that. So if you tried to buy something, it came across my desk for approval and everything. And I did that for quite a few years. Well, while I was doing this was the time that I'm working on my master's, and I actually completed my master's there in marriage, family, couple counseling from Walden. So when I completed the degree, I was like, all right, it's time for me to step into this counseling thing for real, for real. So I started applying for jobs. Of course, if you want to stay in the federal government and you want to stay in this area, it was only 2 places you really could go to get a job if you wanted to stay in mental health and in the federal government. So you could either go to the VA hospital or you could go to the Navy hospital. Well, needless to say, Navy hospital never ever happened for me. I applied millions of times. I couldn't get a resume through the door. But eventually my resume got picked up at the VA for an addiction therapist. And I interviewed for the position and was offered the position. So for my federal employees, going back to the pay scale, before we jump too far ahead, while I was at DLA, I was a GS9 steps 4, I want to say step 4. This new position that I got offered at the VA was also a GS9. So if I was to have taken that position, it would have been a lateral move, so no promotion whatsoever. I would have simply moved over to the new position, which doesn't sound like a bad thing, right? No loss, no harm, no foul. Like, it's always a potential. But the issue with it was that the position that I was hired for is what they call a terminal position, meaning that it's a GS9. That's all it would ever be. There's no potential for promotion to the next grade level or anything. So if I would have taken that position, basically I would have been a GS9 until forever, or until I found a new position somewhere else. So right around this time that I'm offered the position, the HR over at DLA comes to me and he's like, hey, I know you applied for this GS11 position a few times as our authorizing official. And I want to let you know, like, it's coming up again, like within the next few weeks. Your resume is on point. You have the experience. All you got to do is apply for it, and the job is yours. So thinking short-sighted, I'm like, all right, this man just told me I have a guaranteed GS11 position that's going to help me and my family. At the time, it was just me and my wife. I think our baby girl was on the way, but she wasn't here yet. So we got a baby on the way. And I don't know about y'all, but newlyweds, college debt. My wife was working, but at the time she was working as a case manager for one of the community service boards. I mean, it was nice money, but it wasn't great money. I started thinking like, look, this GS11 position is going to be way more beneficial than me just taking this Terminal 9 over here. Yes, in the field that I went to school for, but I think I'm gonna go after the money. Mind you, maybe a month prior to all of this happening, me and my wife ended up taking a trip down there to see my Uncle Robert down there in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I was down there for school, but while I was there, I talked to my Uncle Robert. He picked us up, kind of, showed us around Atlanta a little bit. And I was having a conversation with him like, hey, like, they have these positions open at the VA hospital, but if I take it, I don't think I'm gonna get much money. Like, I don't know how that's gonna work out if I take it and things like this. Matter of fact, I'm speaking to this, like, this is before even got the acceptance letter or the offer letter. And my uncle sort of straight up told me, mind you, my uncle is a doctor. He has a PhD. He's working for Coca-Cola. Like, this man has been a professor. Like, he has accumulated a lot of knowledge over the years. And my uncle tells me, he said, nephew, listen, whatever you do, do not chase the money. He said, follow what your passion is or what you went to school for, what you truly want to do, and in time, the money will come. And of course, going back to what I said not too long ago, where I wasn't an adolescent, but I was still young. So it was like, yeah, I hear you on. But when the opportunity came around and I saw what that GS11 potential looked like and what I knew my salary was going to be at for that addiction therapist, I totally disregarded everything my uncle said and went straight for that GS11. So end up calling the VA, hey, I'm not going to take the position. They're like, okay, cool, Mr. Scott, thank you for letting us know. That's it. That's the end of the process. Just like HR had said, a few weeks go by, the job goes up on usajobs.gov. For those who don't know, that is the website that you have to go to apply for all federal jobs except for a few exceptions. Apply for it, interview for it, and I think I interviewed damn well too, because by this point, I've interviewed for this position a few times, so I felt like I knew the questions ahead of time, only to get a denial letter. So not only did I not get the job that I went to school for, I didn't get the job for more money. So I stayed stuck. From there, it took about another 2 or 3 years for me to even get another referral for a job at the VA. And when it finally happened, it was a GS7 psych tech. Where it started off, it was a step ladder position. For those who don't know, that's when in the government where they can hire you at like a certain grade, but you're guaranteed to go up the ladder. So if you get hired at like a GS7, within the next year, you'll be an 8 or a 9, and you'll go up to whatever the max is over the years. So I jumped ahead a second. I ended up leaving that position at DLA Land and Maritime and taking a position at DLA Aviation up in Richmond. So I was driving up and down Richmond, up and down, back and forth to Richmond every day for about 8 months. My wife really didn't like that, because if anybody knows anything about Virginia or this area of Virginia, to get up to Richmond, you can either take the interstate or you can take what they call 460. Where I lived at the time, the interstate wasn't the best option, but 460 is basically speed trap heaven. And it's those back roads of Virginia, like how they say them back roads of Georgia, where them state police and county police and small town police, they ain't too kind of people that look like us. They was there every day. And I went a good, I'd say about a good 6 months before I ever got pulled over one evening coming home. And that kind of freaked my wife out to the point where she didn't set an ultimatum, but I knew an ultimatum was there. Like, she didn't verbalize it, but I knew, like, I can't do this. And that's when the position for the VA came up. Mind you, I'm still a GS9. But when I took the position up there in Richmond, this was one of those ladder positions where it was like, you get into the program, you start off as a GS9, and within a year you get promoted to the GS11. So mind you, I'm still in the running to get to this 11, but knowing how concerned my wife was for my safety and me being a black man traveling up and down those roads every day, when the opportunity came for the VA hospital again, I took it. In a sense, I ended up taking a position and actually losing money, because once I was, like I said earlier, this was a GS7 position. So I went from a 9 to a 7. Now, one of the things about the federal government that a lot of people don't know is that even if you make a certain amount of money, let's say you make it to a GS9, if you go back down to a GS7, and because there's a salary range for each of these grades. If what you are making at the GS9 level is still within that range of a GS7, they will put you at your salary that you are making, or possibly give you a little bit more if it's still within that range. Now, if you maxed out if you are at GS9 and you come at and you're kind of maxed out at what, let's say you were making more than the max amount that's allowable as a GS7, they would just put you at the max amount. So I ended up taking a cut for a little bit because where I was as a GS9, when I came down to a 7, I was basically maxed out. So I lost money for a little bit, but I was finally in a mental health role. It wasn't a counseling position. It was what they call a psych tech. And like I kind of, talked about in another podcast, is glorified administrative assistant, nurse with no nursing privileges, and a little bit of counseling without counseling, if that makes sense. So basically, we were the in-between person for our licensed providers. So the psychologist, the psychiatrist, all those people on the team, the psych tech was basically the in-between person when it came to dealing with things. So I took the position. I did well in it. And then I had the idea, I was like, well, I'm doing a lot of the things that are required for like my license, like to start the process to get my license as a counselor. Like I'm doing office things. I'm having counseling over the phone with these veterans. I'm doing other administrative stuff. Like I was checking a lot of the boxes that were required for somebody who was doing their residency to get their license as a counselor needed to do. So I ended up going to my supervisor and I'm like, hey, doc, such and such. I want to go ahead and start the process to get my license. Like I'm checking all of these boxes like in my current position that were required for my license. That I feel like I can get it done, And it was like, cool, yeah, go ahead, start the process. So needless to say, I find a supervisor. My wife ends up hooking me up with one of her friends from Virginia State, aka shout out again to Miss Tavera Hillier. She agrees to be my supervisor. We send everything off to the Virginia Board of Counseling. They come back, they approve it, good to go. I go to my supervisor at work. Hey, I got everything. The board signed off on it. I got a supervisor that's going to oversee me. And my supervisor's like, nope, can't do it. You're going to have to do everything off time. Everything that you do in your position, we can't allow that to happen. So that sent the shockwave through me. Like y'all really played me. And the bad thing about it was that when you start the process for your license in Virginia, you have a time limit. You have, I want to say 4 years to get everything done. So not knowing what to do, not having the ability, of course, to do stuff on the outside too much because I'm working a full-time job and I have a young child at home. My wife is in nursing school and things like that. Not having opportunities to kind of like to do hours on the outside. I kind of just almost gave up to a sense where the clock was just running. I wasn't doing nothing about it. And then about 2 years later, still in my role, we get a new tech. And by then I'm considered what you would call like a senior psych tech. So they kind of send people to me to like train and get them up to speed. So I'm telling the guy he's telling me, hey, he's like, yeah, man, what's going on? I heard you got your master's and everything. Why you ain't got your license yet or work on your license yet? And I tell him the story. He was like, bro, he said, listen to me. They lied to you. Or they just didn't know one. He said, I don't want to make it seem like they did it on purpose, but maybe they just didn't know. He said, as long as you have the approval from your supervisor that's going to oversee your residency and the state board about your location, you can work on your hours, how you originally planned to do it. And he said, I had the same question not too long ago because I kind of got the same feedback from you. And I actually reached out to the board of counseling to get clarification. And this is what they told me. So when that man told me that, I can't tell you how pissed the hell off I was that I had wasted 2 years. Mind you, my wife at this point, she's pregnant with our son. She's getting ready to go out on maternity leave. And she's taking a new position. It just so happened when she took this new position that it allowed another opportunity for me to help me accumulate my hours. This is where Miss Rachel Town comes into play. Miss Rachel Towns hires me to do PRN counseling work for their new program at the Community Service Board, which is a crisis receiving center. So my wife goes out on maternity leave and I go out on paternity leave at the federal government because we get 12 weeks. That whole 12 weeks that I was out, I was basically working my PRN job as a full-time job to accumulate hours. So I racked up hours that way. I mean, because I'm PRN, there's no stipulation to how many hours I could get. So I wasn't bound to the whole 40 hours like a regular employee. If I wanted more than 40 hours a week, I was getting it. So collecting hours. I go back to the VA. I'm like, cool, these hours. So then I'm racking up 40 hours every week. On top of that, I'm getting maybe 30 hours every 2 weeks at the crisis center. So I'm just accumulating these hours. And I mean, I'm working my ass off. At this point, I'm like still feeling short. So I reach out to my supervisor. I'm like, yo, I know I'm already doing 2 sites, but hey, what about if I did some counseling as well on one of these online platforms that would allow me as a supervisee to do that? Could we do that? And she's like, yeah. I mean, she's like, I'm a little concerned you're going to overwork yourself, but at this point, the clock is running against me. I'm literally coming down to maybe 6 months, if that, left before the clock runs out, and you have to go through explain to the board why you didn't finish the program in time. So she allows me to start doing this program as well. So I'm working 3 different programs just to make sure I'm accumulating these hours. Once again, shout out to Miss Hilliard for helping me out and giving me that supervision, that guidance on things, and helping me work through all this. And when I tell you, I finished all my hours with 1 month to spare before everything was due. I finished my hours in July, but actually June. We turned everything in July 1st. July 13th, I got my approval letter from the state board saying I was a licensed professional counselor. Mind you, somewhere in that story, I actually ended up getting a licensed professional counselor position at the VA as an unlicensed provider. So I was about that last half, I'll take that back. For about 1 year, I was already in a professional counselor, but still, once again, I'm maxed out at a GS9 because if you're hired as a licensed professional counselor at the VA and you're not fully licensed yet, they hire you at the GS9 with the promotion to GS11. Once again, this damn GS11. They hire you, they promote you to GS11 once you obtain your license from the board. So I got my license in July, turned everything in. They was in the process of finally trying to promote me to the GS11 at the VA hospital. But around September, not being happy in the position that I have been in since March and things not changing to get better, and seeing some of the other LPCs leave the VA hospital and go their own route to start their own private practice, I had a conversation with my wife and I was like, look, we have an opportunity right here. Mental health has never been so much in demand than it is right now. People are out there waiting for counselors. I'm gonna go ahead, leave the VA system, because by now my wife had came into the VA system. So one of the other things that was holding us back from me switching was that I had all the great benefits. So I was in charge of the health care, the dental, the eye insurance, all the great benefits that the federal government offered. But by now my wife had came on board and I'm like, look, let's switch roles. You take on the benefits and I'm gonna go out here and start this private practice and we gonna be all right. And it got to a moment where I had already turned in my 2 weeks notice. And this is the part where I say stepping out on faith, God to let you know like you moving in the right direction. So I turned in my 2 weeks notice. And me and my wife, we went to like the canteen, or aka like the cafeteria, whatever you want to call it. And we were coming back, and this random lady, not random, but she worked at the VA. She was on the janitorial staff. Never seen this lady a million times since being at the VA over the years. I mean, we always spoke, hey, you know, have a great day, you know, things like that. No real conversation though. But this lady this day Me and my wife are coming back from the canteen. She comes up to me and she say, "Hey, I just want to tell you, whatever you have in your mind to do it. They're going to try and stop you. They're going to try to throw all types of things at you. I just want to let you know that God is telling me to let you know, so whatever you're going after, don't stop. Go for it. Get out of this place, baby." Mind you, once again, I never ever had a conversation with this lady ever since working at the VA, other than hey or bye in passing. And at that moment, I knew whatever I was going to do with my professional career was solidified. And just like she said, maybe 2 days later, I get a call from my chief at the VA hospital, who's not even at the VA hospital at the moment. I think they was like at a conference or something. Like, "Hey, I heard you're leaving. I want to offer you this so that you'll stick around. It's another position that we recently had come vacant." Mind you, I have been upset and unhappy in my role for almost 6-7 months now, which is another story of its own. But due to time, I'm not going to stick on it too much longer. And I declined it. And I declined it because, one, this lady had already prepared me to be ready for this type of thing. And two, I got to thinking, if you guys knew how unhappy I was and things like this in this role, and they knew because they made it known that they knew. They always brought it up. "Hey, Fred, we know that this isn't working out how you wanted it to work out. We're working on getting you out of here," and things like that. For you to all of a sudden have the ability to get me out of this role or this position that I've been trying to get out of for months, and for you all of a sudden to have the ability to just basically snap your fingers and make things change, it was a smack in the face of me, because then I felt like you always had this ability, but it wasn't until you saw how much of an asset that you were losing that you were willing to like, okay, he's serious now. But by then it was too late. Fast forward a month and a half now, literally to the day, I've been doing my own private practice thing, and it has been growing steady. Not fast, but steady. And it's been working. My bills are getting paid. My time is flexible. I'm home more with the family, and it's just working out. So I say all that whole story. And if you don't take anything from it, take these two things from it. When somebody tell you, don't chase the money, do what you love, it'll come, they're not lying. Listen to them. And two, when God puts it right in front of you and gives you the answer, when you ask for some type of guidance and he puts it plain in front of you to give you the answer, like you should do it, don't disobey. Push through. And with that, and this being the longest podcast I have ever recorded, even from the days from You're on the Mic with Sync, I'm signing off because I have patience in about 30 minutes. This is Dr. Scott. This has been another episode of Black Excellence in Mental Health, the podcast. Have a good one. Peace.